Hi, I'm Cailli. I'm currently working for Troy Resources at La Mina Cosposo in Argentina. I'm up here today because of where I've worked, rather than because of anything I've actually done. But I've done a lot to be able to work where I have. I left Australia 10 years ago after accepting what was for me a dream job, living in the UK and travelling internationally, providing technical support to a number of mine sites around the world. At the time, I considered myself well equipped for the job professionally, because as anyone here who's studied or worked in Australia knows, and for those of you who don't, it's the Australians who are the world experts at mining. I was also an SBS junkie, and I was even known every now and again to watch a world movie. So I considered myself well equipped culturally as well. So with all this worldly knowledge, it may come as some surprise to learn that in under the first 12 months, I'd managed to do all of the following. I'd embarrassed myself trying to use the toilets at a truck stop in Kazakhstan. I don't travel with flared trousers anymore. I'd narrowly avoided being stoned in Iran after shaking the hands of every engineer I was introduced to. It seems I was meant to have married them first. It was also in Iran where I learnt, if they don't give you PPE for your pit tour, just use your burqa. As they say, Allah protects. I'd also deeply offended the owner of Tongdu Copper when, through a huge miscommunication, I'd apparently linked the Chinese culture to monkeys. I swear, all I was trying to do was explain to the translator that I'd watched every episode of Monkey Magic, which Lonely Planet was trying to convince me was based on a Chinese myth. To this day, I'm convinced it's the only time anyone's done this to him in a business luncheon. So, it only took me a little time to realise that I knew nothing of the world, in spite of SBS's best efforts. It's taken me a little while longer to lose some of my prejudices about how much I know about mining as an Australian. From the UK, I moved to Spain. I think it's a strongly held belief when hiring expats that your mining knowledge is more important than your language skills, which roughly translates as what I know is more important than what I can tell you. I arrived in Spain able to remember only one phrase from my TAFE Spanish classes, which was "Cuánto cuesta la lechuga?" or "How much is the lettuce?" Obviously, there's a limit to how much you can share with your co-workers when you can't even order real food. The alternative is to hire someone into those positions who can speak the language, but maybe don't actually know what they're talking about. So I'd like to step back and let everyone think for themselves and decide which one of those two crappy scenarios is actually the best. And make no mistake, they're both crappy options. For me, it's been brought back a number of times that a good idea, poorly communicated, is still better than someone else's crap idea. But a bad idea that's communicated well, that's presented in the local language, and that's delivered by a familiar face, is probably going to gain the most support. And if those odds are stacked against you, and it's important, you've got a battle on your hands. So, to prepare for battle, I've had to learn a few new ways to communicate. First of all, as every traveller knows, there's always Google Translate, and that one's always a winner. In Spain, the COO sent a now famous email where every mention of the word underground had been replaced with the word subversive culture. Bizarrely, the email still made sense. After Google Translate, you've always got your hands to rely on. So I'd like to share my two most favourite hand gestures of all times. This is road rage in Andalusia. And this is disgust in Argentina. But if you really want to communicate with your co-workers, I found that there's nothing better than rolling up the sleeves and getting in there and showing people what you need or what you expect them to be doing. Be interested enough to actually ask questions about the people you're working with and take the time to make sure you've understood the answers. Ask again. Learn about the experiences of your co-workers before just assuming that you've seen and done more than them. And finally, nothing beats trying to learn a bit of the language. Because of the communication issues, I suspect that working as an expat in an operational role is easier than working as an expat in a technical role, which is probably part of the reason why there's so many more expat operators than expat geologists and engineers. And I also say only part of the reason, because it's also my experience that there are some fantastic engineers and geologists and technical people out there who are completely unrecognised within their own organisations by their peers. But that's a different story. As a technical person, if you're trying to make a design change or implement a new process, you're essentially communicating an idea, which can be really hard to do with just Google Translate and your hands. So if you're trying to do that without the support of operations, and so if you're trying to do that without the support of operations and by yourself, you've got a big challenge. I was involved in a workplace harassment charge in Spain, the result of many things, but including a difference of opinion between myself and the Spanish operations manager as to whether or not jumbos can install mesh. As the operations manager, he controlled the jumbos and the workforce, so had all the tools available at his disposal to be able to prove, at that particular operation, that jumbos actually can't install mesh. So what I'd like to do now is show you all a photo of a jumbo installing mesh. Oh my God, it's a jumbo installing mesh. So what I'd like to also clarify is that the workplace harassment charge was against me. That by stubbornly insisting that we should be using the jumbos to install mesh, I got named as a workplace harasser, and I had to defend myself in a Spanish court with Spanish lawyers and in front of a Spanish judge. So was it worth working in Spain, given all that? Well, to be completely honest, that particular experience was hell. But I also had the time of my life in Spain. And it was also my first glimpse at a truth, which is that there are some practices and some mining methods that may actually have a geographical limit, in addition to anything geological or geotechnical, or even rational. And this was brought home to me again just last week when we were visited by a Chilean engineer. He'd been doing a benchmarking tour of mines in Canada and the US, but he hadn't seen anything like what we were applying in Argentina based on Australian experience. And so in conversation, this engineer kept referring to my experience as my opinion and his experience as experience. And at the time, it pissed me off. But it made me realise that we've both got our experiences and we're both right. But that our experiences themselves couldn't be more different. And another thing that I've learned is that in some of these cases, what you might be up against is a fight that at first you think you can't win, but it's just a matter of it not being easy. And the point is what you're willing to invest in the fight. So for me, was it worth spending 2 years of my life arguing with someone about whether a jumbo can install mesh or not, just in order to prove that I knew more about jumbos than he did? Of course not. In Spain, the alternative was that we were sending people in under unsupported ground to form the mesh to the backs by hand, twitching it together with wire. So for me, that was something that I considered worth fighting for. Have I had to compromise in order to receive some of these opportunities? Yes, definitely. And for a lot of people out there today, those compromises might not actually be worth the opportunities themselves. I've been in the mining industry for 20 years, and I'm only just paying off my first little house. I've learned a second language, but I don't have an MBA. And I've been professionally isolated for approximately half of my career. And when I'm here today, part of these proceedings, it makes me realise just how isolated that is. But it's still not isolated enough to agree with all the Kiwis and the Canadians and the South Africans and the Chileans who think that they know the most about mining. So I'm extremely grateful for the experiences that I've had, the good and the bad. They've been the result of first making and then staying with decisions that some of my friends quite rightly questioned. But for me, the reward has always been in the drive home. No matter how long the day, I've always been able to console myself with the views I have, and this is Argentina, with the novelty of trying to find something recognisable to eat in the supermarket. This is the full extent of international aisle in Andalusia, and I'm still not sure that bovril is a recognisable food. And finally, the realisation that foreign TV is crap, no matter what SBS will try to have you believe. Thank you.